Coming up, we're breaking down the last of the Halloween Horror Nights announcements on this week's episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. I'm your host, Craig Williams, and today I am joined alongside by my co-host, Ryno.
Boo!
Spooky, spooky. Happy Halloween, Ryno. We are going to have a great episode for you because, of course, while we are in Alaska, completely cut off from the internet and the world, that's when the last of the Halloween Horror Nights announcements were made. It was one of those things. It was not a surprise. It was going to happen. And of course it was going to happen, right when we were in the middle of nowhere and couldn't even connect. I was just texting to find out details about it because texts were more reliable than trying to get a website to load. But it's all these announcements you've already probably heard at this point in time. If you haven't yet, thanks for waiting for us to talk about them. But regardless, we are going to break down our thoughts and feelings on the last of the original items for Halloween Horror Nights, plus the scare zones, plus the shows, plus Tribute Store. We're going over all of it. But before we get to that, I want to remind you this is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel. If you like our content and you want to support us, please consider booking a vacation through Dreams Unlimited Travel. It costs you no extra money, and you get the support of an awesome Dreams Unlimited Travel agent. So head over to dreamsunlimitedtravel.com today for a free, no obligation quote. Okay, let's jump into this. We have six original haunted houses this year. That's right, Ryno. If you were to count, you would count it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in fact also 6. And of course, that brings our house total to 10. The 4 intellectual property-based houses already announced included The Weekend After Hours Nightmare, Halloween, Universal Monsters Legends Collide, and The Horrors of Blumhouse, which of course is focusing on Freaky, and also The Black Phone. And that's our full lineup. But we're getting 6 original haunted houses this year, and let's go over them all. And we're going to start with Spirits of the Coven. And this says, enter an unsettling 1920s speakeasy only to discover that they are the main ingredient of witch's brew in Spirits of the Coven. And the Twitter compounded on this a little more, saying, a coven of seemingly beautiful flapper witches will lure you into their 1920 speakeasy, reveal their haggish true form, and turn you into a witch's brew. They'll be cackling. You'll be screaming. This, of all the originals, I think is actually the one I am most looking forward to.
Speakeasy, yeah.
Well, speakeasy, but also witchcraft related. So I love that 1920 setting that they're going with it. Even though I think it was maybe a little bit later, maybe 40s with the noir that they were going for in the Boris Schuster house last year. I still feel like I feel like there's something with 1920s that it still can have a noir vibe with it, but add in witches that start off as we think these are flappers, but then they start turning into old hags. I mean, sign me up for it. I think this has the potential to be one of the most beautiful looking of all of the original houses. But I like a good witch-based house. I don't feel like there's enough, but witches make me think of classic Halloween. And classic Halloween is what I like from Halloween Horror Nights, especially even over top of IPs that I'm not really excited about. I love good classic Halloween feels. So I'm very excited for Spirits of the Coven. What about you, Ryno?
Oh yeah, the same for sure. I love the idea of that being set in the speakeasy, and I do think that witches is something that is not overly used at Halloween Horror Nights really very often at all. Honestly, it's interesting, but
I think even when I blend in the idea of witches, it kind of mashes up with American Horror Story, but then a little bit like the one year they did the Roanoke house, and that wasn't really witches, but it still had that witchcraft vibe to it because it's like early America.
Well, there was that fairy tale one, and that was being led by but that was like the Wicked Witch was leading that one, so it was just like one, right? Because she was supposed to be like the Wicked Witch of the West, wasn't she?
Yeah, but it's still, no, you got the vibe from that as well too, with the witch in there. So I think witches they're underplayed.
I like the use of witches better than vampires and zombies.
For sure. I'm very vampired out in terms of Halloween Horror Nights, and definitely all those years of The Walking Dead just kind of destroyed zombies for me, at least zombies in the slow, boring, moving state.
So you're saying this is the season of the witch? Boom.
Oh, no. It must be the season of the witch.
Season of the witch.
Oh, Ryan. Ryan. That's a good classic joke. So that's
crazy thought. But sorry, before you move on from the witches thing, do you know where in the park this is going to be? Which house? Which house?
Oh my gosh!
I didn't do that on purpose.
Let me see if I can pull up the last Horror Nights Nightmares.
I just feel like there might be like a really fun, cool opportunity. I doubt they'll do it, but I think it would be a cool opportunity if one of the restaurants or one of the tents or something like that could maybe do like a fun like tie-in thing. If it's supposed to be in a speakeasy, I just think there's like something right there that lends itself to this like other type of experience you could have. Or maybe it'll be at that dining thing, but I doubt it.
So it's kind of interesting because the Coven. So let's see how close this was. Okay, so a little off because like the 5 scare zones, to jump ahead of this, we have the Horrors of Halloween one where the Pumpkin Lord will be.
Yes.
Scarecrow, Cursed Soil, Sweet Revenge. That's our New York one with the Halloween parade.
People, right?
Yeah. Graveyard, Deadly Unrest is an ominous Halloween thunderstorm within a ghastly cemetery. I'm assuming that's supposed to be Central Park. And then Escape an Evil Sorceress, bringing forth an army of ravenous monstrosities is Conjure the Dark. So Conjure the Dark, I'm guessing, is the one in San Francisco that has the giant cauldron and looks like ancient like Druish symbols all over.
I feel like they do that sort of thing there.
And it looks very cool, but I'm assuming that's one. So I would have expected the witch one to be somewhere back there, but according to the spec map from Horror Night Nightmares, HN Nightmares on social media, though, they have Spirits of the Coven as the first soundstage you hit when you come into the park.
On the one that's in where the music stage is?
No, even before that. This is going back to like old school style with like American Horror Story, I think was the last one that did it, maybe, where you walk in and before you hit Despicable Me, you take the left and then you enter in on the backside.
Oh, yeah.
I know they used that too in like the 25th anniversary year. They used it for a lot of years, where you would immediately hit a house right there instead of doing then the smashed entrances closer to like Jimmy Fallon and such. But remember, there's also no house in Shrek this year, and there's no house beside Men in Black. So they have to be smarter with how they're using the sound stages this year. And then,
why is there no house next to Men in Black?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. I'm sure someone had pointed that out at some point in time. But
that's where the mashup house usually is, right?
That's where it had been in past years, and last year that's where the Cary, Ohio one was. And it's no, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I'm sure it was put out there. I'm just not sure the exact reason why, so I'm not going to say it. So Spirits of the Coven is supposed to be in the first sound stage as you're coming in. But moving on with the titles, we then have Bugs Eaten Alive, which we talked about, the rumored bug house, face a putrid, skin-crawling infestation of spiders, roaches, flies, bees, and more in Bugs Eaten Alive. And to compound on this more, while touring a 1950s home of the future, you'll be swarmed by hordes of revolting insects as they worm their way into your deepest fears, growing and mutating into unimaginable horrors. And I will be completely honest, on paper, this one does not sound fantastic to me. Compared to the original blurb on it, to the one that Universal's Twitter kind of put out that fleshed it out more, like, I like the idea of the 1950s home of the future vibe that's kind of going into a state of disrepair, but something about the insects, I don't know how that's going to be. Are there going to be oversized insects, or is it going to be just people reacting to the fact that the bugs are taking over? I'm not sure, but I'm not excited for this.
I have a feeling it's going to be that you like, remember those plant costumes from the one with the helicopter in it? I can't remember what that was called. That was in the back.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
I feel like there'll be a lot of like costumes like that where it'll basically just be like black suits covered in certain bugs, like swarms of bugs and stuff like that. I think it'll be people reacting. I honestly bet that there'll probably be a lot of like hanging stuff because I feel like they do the strings, which makes me nervous about my earrings again. But I don't know. I think it could be a cool attempt. I think it could come off good, but it could also come off like not great. But I do have some people I follow on social media. I've seen them react to being like, this sounds really gross because they're not bug people at all.
Yeah. And I'm not like, I don't have a fear of bugs. I'm not that person that's smashing every single bug they see. You know, obviously I freak out if I see a roach in a house because it makes me feel like I'm a dirty person and I'm not cleaning well enough. But I don't.
Also, they move so quick.
Bugs. Yeah,
if you don't get them, they're gone.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't know when you're coming back out. Probably in my mouth while I'm asleep.
Exactly. But I'm not like anti-bug. It's just the idea of bugs in a house.
Like bugs.
Doesn't tiny bugs. It just doesn't. It doesn't really appeal to me. But maybe I will be surprised with it down the road. But I can see why some people are like, nope. Stay away.
I do like the setting of that 50s House of the Future, though. Is interesting. Yeah. I think aesthetically that could be. It seems weird that they like were very specifically like that's the aesthetic we're going for. Oh, because it's probably like those like B-movie black and white bug movies back then. So yeah,
that's why I said I think there's going to be some oversized bugs in there.
Okay, now I see why you said that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But I could be wrong. But another rumored house that ended up being true is Fiesta de Chupacabras. Escape or become prey to a no longer mythical fanged creature in Fiesta de Chupacabras. Universal says more. Visit a Latin American mountain village where the legend of the creature Chupacabras is celebrated with a colorful fiesta, and the streets are lined with the crimson blood of tourists like you. And we talked about this in the speculation maps, that this was one of the ones we are most looking forward to. And I don't know about you, but for me, this still stands on it. Now, the fact that it might actually feel like we're walking through a village where these chupacabras actually are real creatures and are attacking people. I mean, sign me up. I feel like if they have some big open sets in this area, maybe even something like they did years ago with why can't I think of the name of it? The one that was in the western town.
Oh, Lightning Gulch?
Lightning Gulch, thank you. Like, if there can be something open like this, but making you feel like you're in this Latin America village, then that would be absolutely perfect. But obviously there's potential for puppets. There's potential for, just full-size characters. Obviously, again, people being attacked besides just us tourists. I think there's a lot of room for different styles of scares with this. And again, maybe it's just the fact that the setting appeals to me, but I think there's definitely something there. So on the whole list as a whole of the original houses, this and Spirits of the Coven for me are the two that are right up at the top.
I mean, I am excited for it. I think it's kind of I like that. I mean, I like folklore. I love Supernatural, the show. I've been very vocal about that, and I love that. I feel like Chupacabra becomes one of those like folklore, because the first season of Supernatural is all based around like American folklore and stuff like that. But so that's why I always think, and I know Chupacabra. Where does that originate from? It's not. Is it Mexico or is it Texas? It's somewhere in that general deserty region. Although Mexico, I don't consider a desert, I guess. So I don't know. But it's one of those things where it feels very invasive.
It was Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, okay.
Mexico, and the United States.
Okay, because I knew it was definitely in the United States too. But yeah, so I like that idea of that sort of folklore. Like it's the same way with like the idea of like La Llorona. Like I know that's not American folklore, but like it's those the man with the hook.
Yeah,
no, that sort of stuff. I feel like Chupacabra is like a perfect one of those sort of fun things.
Yeah.
Also, you think Chad? In my brain, I think that the Chupacabra and the Cattywampus are like cousins. Like Cattywampus was like, "Oh, I'm the fun one," and then Chupacabra was like, "Well, I murder goats, so I'm cool."
I know we've talked about Cattywampus before, but I'm not.
Cattywampus. Well, the only reason I knew it was even a thing, I thought it was just a saying where you're like, "Oh, it looks all Cattywampus." We learned about it at Knott's Berry Farm.
When?
It's in one of the displays in the Western town, I think. Like it was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, is that a thing?"
Huh.
So I now think it's an entity, but I don't know if it actually is just like a weird looking entity or not. But either way, I think Chupacabra, I'm very open to it, but I'm just like, okay. It's just one of those houses where I look at it and I go, okay.
Yeah.
We'll see when I experience it.
You say that now. I think you're going to love it.
Yeah.
One that I'm definitely not like super pumped for is Hellblock Horror, which is attempt to survive visiting hours for horrifying monsters serving time in Hellblock Horror. To compound on that, enter a prison where savage monsters are caged. When the power goes out, they break free, and it's up to you to detonate the core, destroying the prison and its inmates to save humanity. A lot of questions here. Why is there a core? Is this like a nuclear? It's pronounced nuclear. Yeah. Why is there any core here that needs to be detonated to destroy the prison? I like the idea of monsters in cages because it reminds me very much of Cabin in the Woods, where you just have a bunch of monsters in cages that have the potential to be released. But in this time, it seems it's going to be like more straight up like prison style, Alcatraz, your classic prisons out there. But I just wonder if this is going to be, I wonder if this is going to be monotonous, because I'm like, I kind of sit back and think like, how would I do this if I was designing the house? And it'd be like, well, I'm walking around cells and everyone looks like they're caged up. But then when you go through like a flash of dark, then all of a sudden they're able to jump out and scare you. And I don't know. They're going to have to create some really original monsters that seem unique in order to sell this one for me. But just on paper, not doing it for me. Yeah,
I'm not a fan of like the prison aesthetic. I have that similar feeling where like immediately if it's pirate based, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I also feel like we already, not to be that guy, but I don't, we have problems with prisons in the United States. And so it's one of those where I was like, I don't like using it like this right now while we've got some stuff to figure out. So I feel like I'm very apprehensive. Also, in general, it's the same with like asylum houses. I'm always like, I know what it's going to be like. It's going to smell. It's going to be gross. And it's going to be I feel like it could potentially be a lot of like repetitive scenery.
Yeah.
So that's the only part where I'm not like super excited. But I don't know. Maybe it'll surprise me.
Yeah, it could. But I don't see this as one that's going to excite us.
It feels like a safe bet.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think it does. Yeah. It's just, I think it'll be very, very non-distinct. But maybe I'm wrong. One that I think will end up being a sleeper favorite for me, because on paper I'm not like super pumped for it, but I think I'll end up loving this one, and that's Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake. Endure a petrifying winter thunderstorm in a seaside village ruled by an undead fisherman. And of course, more. In a New England fishing village, undead fishermen emerge from their watery grave to seek their revenge. You may have escaped their hooks in the scare zone. Now they'll reel you in and drag you under. So, of course, this is the sequel to the scare zone that was in New Year's in San Francisco a couple years ago. Sorry, I feel like I just said something completely different in the middle of my sentence, and I probably did. And a good undead fisherman with a hook or any type of scariness to it, I think can be done really well. And I thought the scare zone was done really well. But sometimes the problem with scare zones are there's too much space to work with. You need the confinement of a house. But I think also that can work vice versa. Like the trick or treat house, was great when we had that, but I almost preferred the trick or treat scare zone. Even though it was just a short little street, I felt like there was a little bit more freedom in that. And where in the house, once they built the constrictions on it, it was a little chaotic at parts for me. But this is one where I thought, like in San Francisco, it was kind of a mess. It was just that area is always a nightmare to walk through. So now being able to be fleshed out a little bit more and designed in an interior space, it could actually be really good. And anytime there's a cold house, a blizzard house, you're going to have fake snow somewhere in there. You're going to have that cold rush of AC. You're going to have that fake snow smell. It's going to be, it has the potential to be very good.
Well, it's probably going to be a fishy smell, which is awful. But
no, they're undead fishermen. They shouldn't smell like anything. They're frozen.
The frozen fish, just like the salmon that Jackie Gailey loves. I think, just kidding. I love you, Jackie. They had me at Winter Thunderstorm, so that's where I was like, okay. I was like, I love a good. It's like what you said. I love any house. We didn't have one this last year where it had like snow. I don't think.
No,
Not that I remember.
house.
No.
It's been a while.
So I love a good, because we had that one a couple years ago that was like the old asylum or something like that. We had Krampus and stuff. So and then we had The Shining, obviously, that had the snow scene in it. So I'm looking forward to like a snow scene with it.
The Thing was another cold house.
I think that is before my time. Yeah,
it would have been. Yeah, that was like 2012. Maybe
I probably would have. I would have only been doing like scare zones at that point.
I mean, it wasn't the original Thing. It was based on the remake.
It wasn't a remake. It was a prequel. And
whatever.
I liked the prequel too.
Whatever. I didn't bother watching it, to be completely honest.
It's got Ewan McGregor's lady in it.
Yeah, I know.
Whose name I feel really bad that I should be able to know by myself, because it's the three names, and she was in Birds of Prey and Scott Pilgrim, and
I know it's fallen from my brain.
Always slips out of me. Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah. No, it's one of those situations where obviously The Thing is also a remake, but it was a horror thriller take on not a 50s B movie, because I mean it's definitely not a B movie. I'd
never seen the original,
and it's a really good movie, and I think it's good for what it was at the time, and then The Thing took it to another level in a horrific way, and you had two perfect moments there. You didn't need to screw it up beyond that.
I've only seen the prequel once, and I can barely remember it, and I should have watched the original Thing right before I watched it, because it was literally like, here's where all those props were that you saw in the first movie. I was like, I forget.
I want to watch The Thing now.
That's a good. I'll never not think of the paperclip in or what wasn't a paperclip, I don't think, but the heated thing into the blood.
It's just so.
Always scares me every time.
So good. Kurt Russell at his finest.
Yeah. Oh well. Also, the physical effects in that movie are incredible. Yeah.
No, really good. Really good. I mean, watch that after
the
this.
neck.
Yeah. Don't watch all of this or listen to all this and then watch The Thing. Do that for us. Okay, our final original house, Descendants of Destruction, encounter bloodthirsty mutants living in a post-apocalyptic subway system in Descendants of Destruction, which says, deep below a toxic New York, mutated humans fight to survive in the abandoned subway, but the deeper you go, the darker your fate as you encounter hideous creatures who've left their humanity behind. And obviously, not super excited about this one at all. We just got done saying we don't really enjoy stuff with zombies and vampires anymore. But I'm also kind of like, I feel like mutants are like the next. They're an evolution up from the zombie. They're still gross and disgusting, and you don't really want anything to do with them, and they'll probably try to tear you apart. So I don't have any interest in this one at all. This is at the lowest on my list of all of them, even below Bugs. But do you have any, and Hellblock Horror? But do you have any thoughts on it?
Not really. I mean, it feels very reminiscent of that. What was that one that was like in black and white and was blinking and the monkeys and like
The one in the subway with Paris.
because that was underneath of Paris. But I know that one was also like a prequel to another house, and that one was also like that wasn't vampires, was it? In the end, that they were mutating,
that was vampires,
or was it zombies? Because I was thinking of 28 Days Later. It was very giving me those vibes.
Yeah.
But this one is like, I don't know. It feels another one that I'm like, safe bet.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it'll be great. I don't know.
No, the makeup design could be good with mutants. I feel like there's a lot of possibility for prosthetics and to make the characters actually really visually interesting, but the concept just doesn't grab me at all. But that's fine. Those are our 6 original haunted houses: Spirits of the Coven, Bugs Eaten Alive, Fiesta de Chupacabras, a Hellblock Horror, Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake, and Descendants of Destruction. Now we're going to move into our 5 original scare zones, and we're going to start with Horrors of Halloween, where you'll encounter the Pumpkin Lord and all of his devious subjects. And this is going to be the scare zone that you enter into the park and see right away. Obviously, think if any way to involve the Pumpkin Lord is a perfect decision, because of course that's part of what made. Why did the house just slip out of the name of my head?
Wicked Growth.
Wicked Growth. The Pumpkin King.
Pumpkin Lord.
Pumpkin Lord. Jesus. Jesus. Who's
wept.
the Pumpkin King? That's Jack Skellington, isn't it?
Yeah. I didn't know if you were asking me for real.
I'm exhausted. I think, you know what? If this is just like reusing characters from Wicked Growth, but out in streets, sign me up. And the pumpkins are already up on the trestles, and it's trellis.
I don't know. I liked trestles, but I was like, wow, you used a big word there, but. But I love that it's like at the entrance of the park, because if this is the 31st year, and then that whole idea is that all the scare zones are kind of all themed around like classic Halloweens with 31, October 31st. I'm all about that aesthetic. And that for me will make up for some of the houses that I'm less excited for that could end up being great too, because I'm always positive, open mind, just happy to have a full Halloween event this year. So, but so far, like in terms of what it seems like they're going for aesthetically, starting with this house, this scare zone specifically, is that it's all like oriented around Halloween, the day Halloween, because a lot of the merchandise that's come out seems like that as well. And I'm 100%, I'm all for it. So. Yeah.
You're excellent. So now the next one we will say, we already mentioned it, so we'll talk about Conjure the Dark, escape an evil sorceress bringing forth an army of ravenous monstrosities. So, I believe this is the one that's going to be back in San Francisco. Well, that's why I'm like, is this going to look like the walkers from Festival of Fantasy?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is it going to look like that, where it's people on stilts walking around? Is it just going to be footbird people that aren't wearing any shirts at all? Then is the witch going to be doing a fun show? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
It seems like in a big area for its description. I don't know.
No. So have you seen pictures or been over there to see the area? So this is in front of the exit of Fast and Furious, and they have been very smart this year, and they pushed the stage way back, so there will be plenty of room to walk around.
I was actually I got it mixed up. When you said it, I was thinking it was Hollywood.
No.
I was confused. Okay, that makes sense.
But speaking of Hollywood, that one will be Graveyard, Deadly Unrest, and you'll venture through an ominous Halloween thunderstorm within a ghastly cemetery.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, and this is like the cemetery pieces have all been up for a while, and they added more and more details as it went along too. So this one feels like it has that same vibe, at least looking at the set pieces, like Graveyard Games, which was one of my favorite all-time houses, because it was a modern kids in a graveyard on Halloween where everything started going against them. So
nothing spookier.
No, being in a graveyard on Halloween, count me out of it. Never going to do it. Don't even get me to try. Okay, maybe one day. in the right place.
You come with me home someday. I'll take you to Burial Hill in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Deal.
Haunted.
Deal. You can't stop me. Okay, then we'll get out the one big one that everyone, has been following since they started adding props and such. Sweet Revenge. Experience a terrifying 1950s Halloween parade gone wrong alongside bloodthirsty trick-or-treaters. And this is our New York scare zone. And yeah, it's a parade that everything went wrong, and we're going to see the aftermath of all of it. And I love that at least the props out there do give it that mid-century trick-or-treater vibe. And that's, I don't know, that's like, to me, that's kind of like the glory days of Halloween in my mind. And I never even lived through them, but that kind of seems like if I wanted to be a kid in any other era, it would be around that time. Trick-or-treating. Well,
I feel like, at least from like a graphic artist standpoint, I feel like that's where that's the sweet spot of like Halloween iconography. And I love the look of a classic looking like that pumpkin from the 50s, a witch, that sort of stuff like those. And I think this is actually the thing I'm the most excited for at Halloween Horror Nights this year, because I believe a lot of the merchandise that's come out already is reflective of this kind of area in terms of that sort of stuff. And I'm just very, I'm with you. It reminds me of New England. It reminds me of like that. I don't know. It's just one of those, and then Trick or Treat, I feel like also has a little bit of that 50s aesthetic to it. So that's why it's like, it reminds me of that stuff. And it's like what you said. I think it was like the sweet spot of like, you could argue it was also that for Christmas too, because I feel like that's where we got like the Coca-Cola Santa Claus stuff.
Yeah, maybe that's just merchandising in our minds.
It just was this,
like advertising.
Yeah,
but something about it, it's like that era to me feels like those were the days. I've never watched an episode of that show, so I can't say much more than that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, not my style. I always turned it.
Just couldn't get through the theme song.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and every time
I didn't know it was like a joke. I was just like, God, this is awful.
Wait, that was a joke?
Yeah, it was the whole joke, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that was the joke in it. So I thought that was the real thing. That's why I never really watched it. But since we brought up Sweet Revenge, I feel like we have to just throw it in here now too. Of course, in New York, that's where Sweet Revenge is, and that's where the tribute store is. So let's talk about the tribute store. For the first time ever, the scares taking root in the streets of Universal Studios Florida will bleed into the theme of the Halloween Horror Nights tribute store with a collection of incredibly detailed environments inspired by the iconic Halloween haunts featured throughout the event. Guests will shop the latest Halloween Horror Nights merchandise and treats as they venture through a pumpkin patch, a cemetery, and a witch's cottage, eventually making their way to the final room, an elaborate Halloween festival set in the same town as the store's neighboring scare zone, Sweet Revenge. So while you'll see vibes from the other scare zones and such in the tribute store, it all culminates with Sweet Revenge. So you kind of walk into the tribute store, and you go through it all, and then you end, and then it's like you're right back all into that cohesive story. So yeah. I love that they're doing that with this. It's actually really smart. Something that I think they'll probably try to integrate in years moving forward. If it can blend with the scare zone that's right there, why the heck not do it? It's just synergy. It's synergy.
Cinnamon.
But we have one last scare zone to mention, and that's Scarecrow, Cursed Soil. Reap the wrath of Scarecrows who will stop at nothing to harvest their souls. And Scarecrows, always a solid bet, too. Mm-hmm. Scary Scarecrows.
I love a good cornfield.
Yeah. No, I love them, too. I think that works. And, by process of elimination, this has to be in the Central Park area. And they always do a good job with this area. I feel like this scare zone is always, it's always one of the most beautiful once you throw in that fog. Right now there's big platforms in there, so we'll have to see how that plays in with Scarecrows, assuming that, nothing's weird and we're off on this where the areas are, but definitely have some anticipation for this. But we have 2 more live shows to just go over very quickly. The first one I know we're not going to have a lot to say about because we did not care for the first iteration of the show. But Halloween Nightmare Fuel is back, and this time it is Halloween Nightmare Fuel Wildfire. Way too wordy, way too many words in there. That's the sequel to last year's fan favorite show featuring the world-famous performance group, the Fuel Girls, highlighting a new dreamer in the depths of a new nighttime set to a heart-pounding metal, rock, and electronica score. And Universal's Twitter didn't really have any way to compound on that. And listen, the performers in the show are wildly talented. Some of the magic that they did in the show was pretty cool. I will admit that. It's just not. It's not the show for me. I liked Bill and Ted not because of the half naked dancers. I liked it because of the humor in it. And with Nightmare Fuel, it's more of just like the heavy metal dancing with half naked girls, and then some of the stuff that we were used to with Academy of Villains thrown in too, with some other interesting performers. And it's like I think I like elements on its own, but the show last year did not blend together for me, and I'm not sure if this one's is going to either. But I'll see it at least once.
Well, yeah, obviously, but I don't like for me, it feels very like aggressively heterosexual, so it makes me uncomfortable. Like it makes me feel like I was not considered in the making of this whatsoever.
But that's the thing that I disagree with. I don't even think it's aggressively heterosexual. It feels
the description of the new one feels that way.
Maybe it is, but I mean,
read the first 2 sentences.
Last year's show also featured half naked men as well.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine as long as there's representation on both sides of that thing.
I read the performance group, the Fuel Girls.
Yeah,
they're the ones who set up that's the group behind it. But they obviously bring in other people besides just women.
Okay, as long as there's not just half-naked women on the stage.
They're the one. So they did the show.
Sexualize one, we should sexualize both of them.
They did the show last year, and there was more than just Fuel Girls, were there not?
I don't remember that.
There was the contortionist,
the guy,
literally the male lead of the show.
Yeah, but it's like there was
plenty others.
I don't know.
There was a lot in there. Listen,
it just starts to not feel like you're attracting the vibe, the people that I want to hang out with.
We don't have to argue about this because the show is just not our vibe in general. It's not the style of show that we enjoy. And
I know there are people who do, though.
I believe we are in the minority of people who saw that show that thought that was the greatest show to happen in years at Universal. And so I know I'm definitely in a small group of people with my dissenting opinion on the show. But if you loved it, it'll be back this year with the sequel show, Wildfire. And you know what? I'll give it a chance. First time around, and if I don't like it, I will make sure I don't take a seat away from you. Moving on in the future, you will have my seat if I don't like it.
I'm open to, I mean, like watching my video back, there are, like what you said, there was incredibly talented performers in the show, so I'm just interested to see how it all comes together. For me, a lot of it will be the music. We'll see.
And I'm very particular about music, so a lot of times I don't like the musical choices being made. But hopefully, in terms of music, this could be an interesting one. The other show is Ghoulish, a Halloween tale, an all-new show taking place in the Universal Studios Lagoon that follows the Grim Reaper on the undertaking of what happens beyond the grave, all set to eerily remixed music by some of today's most iconic artists. So who are the artists?
Yeah.
What's the music? Who's doing the remixes? I'm assuming it's going to be kind of like a metal style remix with it, and a lot of like, was that awful? That was pretty awful, wasn't it? Yeah. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean when I'm saying it. But maybe it's just dance. Maybe it's just dance remix. I'd be fine with that. But I don't know. I like this. I like that they're giving a central character in this one that we're going to follow, the Grim Reaper. And, then in terms of what happens beyond the grave, who knows? But I like that they're not necessarily just settling on like intellectual property. I like that it feels like they're trying something new with the Lagoon show. And for that reason, I'm all in on this one. But we love fountain shows.
Have you seen the signage for it?
No.
I'm looking at it right now. I can't really see it here, but it's a giant. It's a giant 1950s record album.
Oh my!
With the vinyl sticking out of it.
Hang on,
it's a go to Sean. Sean just retweeted it. Sean Thompson. It's from 7 hours ago. So it was today.
Oh wow!
But yeah, and I'm like, okay, release the vinyl too, then, because I want that. Because it actually looks kind of really interesting. 13-page read-along book and record. I am very judging. I like the idea that it's an original show, although it could end up being like the houses all intermixed into it too, or the scare zones. But either way, the signage is actually making me think it's going to be a lot different than I think that description came off. But I really hope they release this album, because I know the last 2 years they've done a vinyl.
I definitely don't get considering they're going with the it says a Halloween Horror Nights record and story, so it's set up like the old records, that had the book with it for kids. So it does give off this vibe that this will be, while Grim Reaper might be the star of it, it definitely has a kitschy, again, classic Halloween feel to it. But I also did talk to another person at Universal at one point in time, and we're kind of talking about the fact that it feels like this year's Halloween Horror Nights is definitely potentially has a little bit more of a family friendly vibe to it, and that would be interesting if they go that route. But
I don't know about that. I don't know that I'm getting that right now. I mean, from the merchandise, maybe you feel that way, but none of the descriptions of anything make me feel it. Because I would argue the most family-friendly version of it that I've experienced so far would have been the 2019 one, where they said it was like PG-13.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like friendly.
I think they
but
might be dipping their toes into that again. So,
hey,
listen, if it's one of those things that as fans of the event, maybe it's something that we don't necessarily want to see, but Universal is smarter to do that and open up to a wider market.
I would rather see them play with it all the time like that. Because for me, again, I'll say it, I think 2019 has been my favorite year because ultimately there was a lot of very memorable houses like Poltergeist, Ghostbusters, Stranger Things, and of course that I believe that was the first time we had a Universal Monsters house. And I loved that was the first Lagoon show. I loved that Lagoon show. I loved the aesthetic of all the neon lights. And so that vibe for me was perfect. And then the 2021 one was a completely different feeling, which is fine. But I don't want to dip back into the heavy metal, vomit, smell it. I don't want just that stuff. I want it to be. So that's what I'm saying is I really like the mix, it seems, is in play this year with a lot of that classic Halloween aesthetic, but also the houses seem interesting, even though I'm not necessarily particularly thrilled for any house. Although the Weekend house I'm coming around on, but.
Yeah. We'll have to see. We are 1 week away from the start of Halloween Horror Nights, and it'll be even more exciting because I think the team member preview is a couple days before the event, and or actually no, is it? It might be even sooner this year than I don't remember exactly when it is, but that's always our kind of first look and insight into what's really happening with Halloween Horror Nights and how the first group of mega fans are really feeling about it, and then it's all opened up to us, and of course we will be there covering it not just on opening night and opening weekend, but then throughout the entire season, because we do our houses and such that first night, and then we get more time to explore in scare zones after that first night, and then of course the food will come later. It's going to be a good time. I am very excited for this year's event. I feel like I need Halloween right now after being in colder Alaskan weather and getting those fall vibes. I'm now I need Halloween Horror Nights to round out the summer for me and really put me in that holiday season of Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Arbor Day. Specifically Arbor Day. But yep, so a great lineup, and we can't wait to get out there and see it. So I have nothing else. Do you, Ryno?
Nope, just very excited. Can't wait to see all the stuff. I can't wait for the tribute store to open.
Well, thank you. But Thank you, everyone out there, for taking the time to listen and watch us. We do it because of you, and I really appreciate it. So from the bottom of my heart, once again, thank you. If you want to support us, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave comments, questions, video suggestions in the comments section. If you're listening to this, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you can also leave a rating and review where you listen, please take the time to do that. And if you want to support us more, book a vacation through Dreams Unlimited Travel. Get a free no obligation quote at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. But that's going to do it for us this week with the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. We'll see you again real soon with another episode of the DIS Unplugged Universal Edition. But until then, remember, we still haven't changed the name.